Welcome, everybody. Volume okay? Okay, great. So what's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. We decided to have a little bit of fun today. And so we're going to have challenges throughout. And so the first challenge is, so what do you think the buzz is about? What are you hearing at the water cooler or the coffee machine or on Marketplace or when you're talking to your peers? What sort of management practices are you hearing about? None. Nothing.
Innovation, encouraging innovation, or how to encourage innovation.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
What?
Hold on to those.
Diversity.
Okay. How about employee engagement?
Any other thoughts of things that are being talked about a lot?
Telecommuting.
Yeah?
What did you say?
Telecommuting?
Training and development.
Culture.
Good. Okay.
Millennials.
Millennials, yeah. All right, so this is what the list that we came up with. So after reading a quick fire of 9 different books and looking at a bunch of TED Talks and talking to our peers and listening to NPR and all those things, these were the primary topics that we came up with. And so we have subtopics to each of these, 20 in total, and here's where we're going to go. So in general, we've set up the slides so that when we're referencing a very specific resource, it's over here on the side. Although all the way through, I make not necessarily specific references to this book, but of all the different sources I read, this book, Managing for Happiness, kept coming back with the same, exact same ideas over and over again as sort of an overview book where all the other books really dug into specific topics. And there is, the reading list is on the table as well. So prevailing buzz overall came to be focusing on the systems. So if we provide the desired environment, then the people within the environment are able to thrive and be their best. So that's the one linchpin to the whole thing. So the author in this book, again, points out concrete practices can run the risk of people trying to follow the specific principle that's being offered rather than really understanding the idea. So instead of providing the specific, here's how to accomplish this, whatever this is, to improve the organization, focus on that principle of what you're trying to do. And so we'll dig into that some more as well. Another book that came out a lot as kind of an overview book was The Under New Management. And this source repeatedly cites that employee engagement cares deeply about their work, their colleagues, and the mission of the organization. So the engaged employee can bring more mental energy to their everyday work. And that's obviously what we want to do. We want to try and bring out the most in engagement. And if we can engage the individual, and rather than having the manager control the destiny of the individual, but have the individual have that autonomy, we'll have much better results with it. So it raises the question of, does the structure of your organization limit the perception of freedom and block the organization from reaching its peak potential? So in early 2016, Netflix put out this PowerPoint called Freedom and Responsibility, and it went viral. It's 125 slides, and it's actually a really great slide presentation. And in it, one of their really critical points that comes out throughout this is the whole idea that management should provide context, not control. And with the insight from that and understanding, it enables the population to make sound decisions. So that's our background, and now we're going to dive into the buzz. So under culture, we narrowed it down to these 3 topics. So with vision, Simon talks about that you want to start with the why. So we all know we all know what we want to do. So it's kind of the big circle is the what. And many of us know how we want to accomplish something, but only some know the why. So if we can focus always on the why, we have a much better result of reaching our end conclusion. Super bosses are, and I'll go into a lot more detail about them in a little bit, but they provide a clear and uncompromising vision of a project, of the company, of the industry, whatever it is, while at the same time encouraging everyone within the organization to rethink virtually everything else about their jobs. So the vision drives the group culture. And if we protect the why and we constantly improve the how, we'll get where we're trying to go. When we heard yesterday at the opening speech from Jeff Adams, he had that really clear vision. And it didn't matter whether he was winning the race or losing the race, he still had that clear vision and understood why he was running the race. Okay, we've got a challenge question here. So, sorry.
Okay. So if the challenge is to put customers first, or second, who comes first?
Employees.
Who said that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So under new management, one of the texts, it's looking at turning the whole hierarchy upside down and making the managers accountable to staff and to support functions accountable to frontline employees. Some organizations have even gone so far as to set up help desk tickets, similar to what an IT ticket would be. So you put in a help desk ticket that you as a staff member, as an employee, are having some kind of problem, some kind of tool or resource or training is lacking, and you submit the ticket, and the only person that can close that ticket is the individual that opened it. And it's management's responsibility to do everything they can to ensure that that ticket is resolved and the ticket gets closed. And it actually can foster a culture where the race kind of becomes as quick as you can to solve the employee concern and help them be as successful as they can be. There's this thing called the service profit chain. So profit grows by customer loyalty, and loyalty is influenced by customer satisfaction. Satisfaction is stimulated by the perception of value of service. Value is the result of productive employees, and productivity stems from employee satisfaction. So instead of putting our customers first or our members first, if we actually put our staff internally first and then we drive that out, we should have the results exactly that we're looking for. Okay, moving on to the next one, well-being. So in the wellness, the 5 essential functions, they are career, and that's determined to be the most critical of the well-being factors. And career is defined really broadly as how you spend your day. So for us in the room, we spend our day mostly working, and so that's obvious career. But career can also be the stay-home parent, the full-time volunteer worker, the student in school, however that day is spent. If you're finding your career fulfilling, it has the most influence on enhancing your well-being. Social is the second component, not in rank, but just second component on the list. It's leveraging to enhance the other areas. So by making career more engaging, and the social also helps engage physical activity. So when you think about, you might not necessarily want to go to the gym, but if you can find a friend to go to the gym with you, you have that social component, you're more likely to go to the gym. So if you want to further enhance the social element, focus and enhance the career element by integrating social into it, you'll enhance the career. So they partner off of each other. Financial is an interesting one. Its overarching comment is that you get more from the financial by giving it away. So it's not just about what you have in your own bank account, although that obviously helps, but you feel more financial well-being the more comfortable and capable you are at giving those finances to others. Physical is integrating movement into your daily life, and community is once we've satisfied safety, whether that's our water system or the locks on our doors, then we can get more from the community the more we give away to the community. So it's similar to financial in that context. We feel more from it by giving to it. So this morning when we heard the speaker, she was phenomenal. She specifically noted that part of an award she won that was given to her by AAP was by donating back to her community where she grew up. So she combined those two elements right away, the finance and the community. And all of us that heard it, I think, felt pretty moved by that. So nice little case in point. So this author, Leah Stinger, and I'm terrible with names, so I apologize. She set out to write a book about sort of a self-help book on creating a healthier work environment for herself. And instead, what she ended up was coming back to that it's really not about the individual and a self-help for the individual, but it's really more of a self-help for the organization, which is how we sort of open this topic. So here she lists a whole bunch of different ideas. Some of them are incredibly obvious, but the healthy employee is more creative, more productive, more engaged, less prone to take sick time, and less likely to suffer from chronic illness. So as an organization, we want to do everything we can to encourage and support the healthy individual. So although we're not quite 20 minutes into this presentation, one of her tips is to stand up and stretch every 20 minutes. So everyone stand up. Stretch!
Are we going to do the napping next?
No.
About that.
It's after lunch.
Thank you. So I know for me, when I look at my calendar over the course of the week, and you're welcome to stand as long as you want or sit whenever you're ready, that over the course of the week, I almost always end up with a meeting at 10 a.m. People love putting calendars on your meeting at 10 a.m. A suggestion that she makes is to make those walking meetings, because you want to get that physical activity in the morning, and that's a really good way to sort of kick up and revive your day with that morning start. Jonathan pointed out that the napping pods. A story I heard on NPR not long ago was that many high schools have actually introduced napping pods. So when the high school students start nodding off in class, instead of being yelled at by the teacher and sent to the principal's office, they're actually sent to a napping pod. And they're given the time that they need to power down and power back up, and the napping pod is set to simulate this quick getting you into a REM sleep and coming back out of it. And then you come back to class and you're more invigorated.
Did the book indicate how long the nap is supposed to be?
Yeah, it's a less than 20-minute nap.
Less than 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Excuse for homework.
That's a whole different topic. And then a tidy workplace is kind of another interesting one. So by removing paper and clutter from a desk, you're helping to remove the attraction of desk dust and desk mites, paper mites, which can trigger allergies. So you want to keep a clean desk. And also having a lot of piles of paper around you can make you feel much more crowded, which will negatively impact your creativity. So you don't want to be so sterile that you don't have creative juices, but you also want to find that balance so that you're clean and tidy. All right, moving right on. Oh, I'm sorry, I had one other thing on well-being, which is going back to this why. If we know why we're trying to create well-being in our workplace, we're going to help drive people to having a more well-being lifestyle. But each individual is motivated by very different reasons. So when you're encouraging well-being in your workplace, you want to do it in a manner that creates sort of a buffet of reasons so that different people are motivated by those different things, whether it's the financial or the social or the community. You want to kind of fit into all of those reasons. All right, here's our next big topic, and I know somebody mentioned this early on. So we broke this down into 4 primary topics. All right, Facebook. The actual opposite of the vision question. So in vision, we want to start with the why. When we're setting up our culture, we want to drive our why. When you're coaching, you absolutely want to do the exact opposite. You don't want to start with the why. Because when you're asked why by your manager, the person who's trying to coach you at times, you get defensive and you feel vulnerable possibly. And so why is not a coaching question. Why is a question that you ask when you're seeking answers. And coaching isn't about seeking answers. It's about creating an environment and a path in order to allow people to do their best and to come up with their own solutions. So,
Our challenge question, what does Facebook ask you when you post something?
What's on your mind?
exactly.
Okay, more than one person.
Prize?
Nice.
Maybe.
Coin.
I
So yes, Facebook, up until I finished writing this presentation, always said what's on your mind. They just kind of changed the app a little bit, and now on your handheld device, they keep rotating what the questions are. What's on your mind pops up every 8th question or so. But this is a great coaching question. So by asking what's on your mind, you're opening up a coaching question to solicit true and proper feedback to allow a conversation to open in a really general way. And if you want to dig deeper, you can say, so is there anything else on your mind? And if you really want to take the question home for coaching, you say, so what's the real challenge for you? And by putting the emphasis on the for you, you're reminding the person who's being coached that it's really about them. It's not about any other things around them, but it's really, the focus is that they're being coached and what do they need. Super bosses. So super bosses are the result of having a prolific network of mentees that develop and that are sent out into the world. And the book Super Bosses goes through a large multitude of these incredibly successful people, whether they're chefs or coaches or business folk. I mean, it's really a very varied list. And the elements of what makes up a super boss and the style of a super boss are really varied. But they do come down to some really noteworthy and common practices. They're always unique, authentic, and consistent in what their vision is. Okay? They're a master of communicating their vision, and they're relentless in their pursuit of excellence. So if we take a quick second, who attended Dominique's presentation yesterday? As I was listening to his presentation, I kept thinking, to me, he fits the definition of a super boss. I have no idea if he actually has had the success of if his mentees have gone out into the world and are creating mini, whether it's game apps or whether it's chocolate presentations, but I felt when he was talking that he was so crystal clear in his vision that it begged to be followed, or at least to go get a chocolate dip. So to the super boss, absolutely nothing is sacred except for that vision. And when you put that concept as your prevailing thought, everything else can be changed. You can challenge every other assumption. And super bosses are so incredibly confident in who they are that they have plenty of room to be surrounded by tremendous talent that can also shine and even outshine them, because they have such confidence that no one can really outshine them because they're super bosses. So the traditional versus the super boss. The traditional manager really choreographs their day. They work really hard to get things done, to check things off the to-do list. And as a result, they have very little unstructured time, and that leaves them very little time for coaching. And the super boss is all about having those credible, intimate coaching moments that they're really helping spread their vision. So as a manager, one of the things that you want to do is try and unstructure some of your time, allow for more room to create those learning opportunities. Okay, rethinking performance appraisals. An exhaustive, huge list of resources are out there. Harvard Business Review started kind of hinting about rethinking performance evaluations around 2013, and it's just picked up a lot of momentum. There's no specific guide on the reference sheet to rethinking performance evaluations and performance management as a whole, but it is such a huge list of topics and resources out there, and if anybody is specifically interested in it, I'm happy to share my resource list that we put together. So the whole idea on rethinking performance management is that it came to be the realization that we as organizations are spending a tremendous amount of time getting these annual forms done, and the people who are being reviewed are typically not really happy with the results of how the process went. And all the research shows this thing called the idiosyncratic rater effect, which shows that 60% of the review is a result of the reviewer, not the person being reviewed. So if you think back to your years and years of annual performance reviews, it goes, oh, wow. So we obviously want to change that. So coaching is, in fact, the model of the future, celebrating successes and adding more into the evaluation process through that coaching and that celebration. So we made this really personal, actually, at AIP, and we this year have gone through a whole rethink our performance management process and have done away with the annual review. I'm happy with that, John. So we have now implemented a coaching model, and we've just launched it, so I don't know how it's going to go yet, but it looks encouraging and exciting. So, all right, here's another one. Yeah.
How large is your staff?
120 people.
Curious on the coaching.
Uh-huh.
What's the frequency of which, as opposed to an annual review?
Right. So it's different for different organizations, and the way that we're rolling it out at AIP is that we're looking for a minimum of quarterly documented coaching conversations. We're hoping for actual monthly conversations, but a lot of people have them daily. It just depends on how new the individual is to their role and what kind of coaching they need, and so.
We do ours monthly. We do a monthly coaching feedback if not, and our staff get a 10-minute coaching session kind of on the spot each month. And then they do one-on-ones as necessary to kind of build upon that.
Are both of yours in writing as well? I heard yes and.
Well, yes and no. So.
Okay, I'm speaking about legal, employment law. Like
Yeah.
You need some kind of stuff in writing.
Well,
maybe.
It's debatable if you do need it or not. and it depends on why you're putting it in writing. So if you're putting it in writing to legally document what you've got going on, then that's kind of a different organizational element, and you're going more into a performance management for legal protection versus coaching and trying to get the best out of your staff. So you have to decide why you're writing it and what your goal is with that. But with our model, we are quarterly having an open dialogue box of getting it written.
So then how do you, is that tied to a rating system? How does it tie into increase, or is it completely separate and those aren't
Yeah,
anymore, or?
really good questions, and I'm gonna
We're gonna hit that.
we're a little bit. We're gonna hit it later on, so I'm gonna hold off on that. Okay. So this source, it was too long of a name with too many authors, so the actual title of the resource is the title of the slide. This deliberately developmental organization, a DDO, of all the things that I read, this one was the weirdest by a long stretch. So in this book, they're taking several organizations that have completely become DDOs, and it is just so far outside of our normal realm of what works. When you look at what their individual practices are, they just kind of made me itch. But when I thought about what they're doing and why they're doing it, I really had tremendous appreciation for it. So the idea in a DDO is creating this completely trusting environment. It tolerates and even prefers weaknesses to be public, so that colleagues can support you in overcoming them. So the point of entry in development is not the individual being developed, but the organization, totally turning things on its head. So one of the specific organizations, Decorian, that is focused on it, has this concept that every single person, including every one of us in this room, are either arrogant, we're overly confident, or we're humble and we're insecure. And so what they do with this organization is they partner one humble with one arrogant, and every day these two individuals meet and they talk and they help correct and find their balance so that they're not arrogant or humble, but they're finding that nice sweet spot. And it's very possible that in different situations, the person who is arrogant on one topic is very humble in another. So the partners are constantly being rearranged because as you're learning one skill, you're then balancing and rebalancing. So it's weird. It's just a really weird cultural idea, but it has some really interesting ideas. And so here's this other idea that if life is everything outside of the workplace, then that leaves this really bleak notion that work is something that's a trade-off against a joyful living. And so the idea in the DDO is to create a place where people can flourish. So the organizations expend enormous energy typically in our organizations, we spend tremendous energy protecting ourselves. We hide the private parts of ourselves, we avoid conflict, we unwittingly sabotage change efforts, we suddenly enforce the separation between the me at work and the me at home. Instead, the DDO says, let's create an environment that allows everything to be public. You no longer have to protect what's private, because if you let what's private out to become public, and you let people support you and work with you, then the whole thing can be this community of support, and together we can grow. It's, as I said, it's very weird. Very weird.
Question?
Yeah.
So, yeah, this we could probably spend an hour talking about.
Oh, hours.
I have a specific question.
Yeah.
So, based on sort of going back to coaching and performance management.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of individuals in a lot of organizations perceive that their own performance is tied to their potential for advancement in the organization, and so naturally people will try to put their best faces and feet forward and try to, keep what they perceive as their own weaknesses hidden.
Yeah.
So how does that jive with, how do you do that through coaching and other things? Like if I know I have a particular weakness and I think I know what my own weaknesses are, how do I bring that out in an environment but still want to achieve my own, not want to jeopardize my own goals?
So I think you should read the DDO, because there are chapters and chapters about just that. So there are things that are mentioned within DDO cultures that talk about, one, if you're being successful in the role you're in, you've outgrown it and you need to be moved to another position. Because you should always be struggling and failing and reinventing and trying in order to grow. And if you're succeeding all the time, then you've outgrown it. So if the culture also accepts that failure is success, then it allows you to have advancement with failure. So failure becomes a friend. I think we heard that this morning, right? Be friends with your failure. Yeah.
I think too, if the culture is one of nurturing
Mhm.
and trust
Mhm.
that you have with that immediate supervisor, then I think it's easier to bear one's soul.
Right.
If there's not that level of trust and communication, it'll never happen. So the things that really need to be worked on, unless they're exposed somehow through job performance or lack thereof, could go unnoticed for quite some time. But it might be earmarked in other areas of performance.
Right.
So it's one of those tricky things, but it gets back to culture.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to talk about it, but you have to walk it every day. And if you have that walk by conversation, there's a time you have to stop and turn and re-engage. Even though you're late for a meeting, you know you have to get fully engrossed in that conversation, because to that person, it is the most important thing at that particular point of the day.
Right. So in the DDOs, typically 50% of a person's time is spent on driving the purpose of the organization, driving the revenue. I think all the examples they cited were for-profit organizations. So 50% of the individual's time is spent on what makes sense for the organization, driving the vision and raising revenue. The other 50% is driven on culture and personal development within the culture. Shocking. Yeah. Okay, teams. Next huge topic. So we have 3 primary topics here. And I was really excited by this morning when we heard about creative workers. So creative workers, we think back to kind of work in history. We started with the agricultural worker, then we go to the industrial worker, and then the knowledge worker. And now we're actually in the creative worker. And until I started doing this reading, I really hadn't realized that we were out of the knowledge area and into the creative. But when I was reading it again, it just really made sense. So within the knowledge worker, we have less hierarchies because within the creative workers, we have less hierarchies. You need to have that creative flow and not be in a structured, straight line organization. So if you really are in a creative environment, you might want to rethink your organizational chart. And is the organizational chart as fluid as the work environment is to support that creativity? More teams, more networking, more rooms for error in order to have that creative work. So making friends with failure, we heard this morning. My favorite example of kind of the ultimate error that stemmed from great creativity was 3M and the Post-it note. I mean, just a pretty obvious one that we all know about. Okay, for Lexion fans, Patrick has come out with his new book and earlier in 16, and it's The Ideal Team Player. And in this, he, in his typical style, he writes a little vignette, a story that takes you through a team trying to find their ideal team player. And they identify these 3 traits, humble and hungry and smart, people smart. So he goes further and he says, it's not just about being humble and hungry and smart, but you actually need to find the intersection of all 3. So we have a little Venn diagram here. And if we have only if we don't have any of these traits in a candidate, in a team player, we're not going to bring them on because they're clearly not who we want. When we have one of them, so if we have somebody who's only humble, then they're probably a pawn. If we have somebody who's only hungry, they're a bit of a bulldozer. If we have somebody who's only smart, then they're a charmer. It starts getting harder to distinguish the ideal team player when you put 2 of them together. So if the individual is both humble and hungry, then they're the accidental mess maker. Okay? If we have somebody who's hungry and smart, we have someone who's the skillful politician. And those are a lot of times the hardest people to identify because they are, in fact, skillful politicians. If we have someone with the people smarts and humble, then they're the lovable slacker. And when we think about these concepts of how these 2 different elements can work together and what they create, we start thinking about the people in our organization and understand it. So now if we take the ideal team player that has all three of these traits, fantastic. If they don't yet have all three of those traits, you can use your coaching skills to help bring in the third, the one that's missing. Challenge.
Challenge question. So thinking about super bosses, traditional versus super boss, how do you think a super boss might hire for their team?
They might hire for the team to sort of complement their own weaknesses.
Anyone else?
I would basically have the entire team to have in the same room with the candidate to make sure they can connect with each other.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
I have found that people hire people like themselves, you know, that think the way they do, and so depending on their makeup, so many bosses hire people that agree with them, which is not always the best thing.
Do you think that would be a super boss?
I don't know.
All right. So hiring as a team is absolutely a super boss trait. The super boss is really looking to find people who are going to partner, learn, adapt, and so they interview the entire group in the interview process. The super boss is going to resist the urge to hire a candidate that actually meets the credentials that HR works so hard to put on paper and put in the ad, because the super boss is actually looking for that buzz, the energy that the candidate is going to bring, that individual is going to bring. And so the super boss is very careful about weeding out people that even though they don't align necessarily with the job, they still have they understand the vision and they might have an unorthodox approach to getting there, but they're willing to run the race. Of course, once you have a more talented team, you need to help foster it and encourage it. What I found interesting was sort of regardless of the source, almost all of them have this common thread about involving the team in the hiring process. So it's really not about a superior interviewing for their subordinate, but it's about the candidate coming in and meeting all of their peers in the interview process and allowing the peers to have a voice of whether that individual is going to become a valued part of the community to help enhance the social element of the job so that the group can fulfill their well-being with their career. See how it all kind of starts weaving together? And then, of course, once you have unusually talented people, you have to work really hard to help them achieve extraordinary results, both for the organization and for themselves. All right, retention or not? So we hired the right people. We want to keep them, right? I mean, we do. And yeah. We have all these new topics now falling under retention. So these are the three that we're going to highlight. So paying people to quit. It's not severance. What's happening?
What's happening? Why? It's a challenge question. Concept of paying people to quit.
Maybe even after all the careful planning, the person just isn't the right fit in your group, and you're just encouraging them to take another venture instead of damaging the team that you have in place.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I don't know if that answers that.
Anyone else want to talk about it?
I've worked with a few people, I would have loved that they paid them.
Absolutely. All right. So, yes, that's absolutely it. So, paying people to quit. I think Zappos was probably one of the first companies that really pushed this idea, and it's catching on. So, the idea is that you have your new hire, you finish the onboarding process, and you're somewhere in those first 30 days, and they start scratching their head saying, "Did I take the right job?" And in the normal environment, they keep working because they committed, and you keep letting them work because you committed, and everyone's kind of on the situation. So in this new theory, you instead, at the end of their orientation period, whatever you want to call that onboarding time period, you instead offer them the opportunity to come to work the next day and thrive and prosper and build the company and the organization into the future. Or you give them a check and you say, take the money and do whatever you want with it, go. Fly and be free. So by taking the money, you're screening out the people who would probably quit anyway, the people who would bring down the organization, create a hassle for others. You're self-selecting out the disengaged. And you're creating a really nice, well-lit, safe exit path for people that know they shouldn't be there. So that got some momentum going, and then somebody came up and said, well, if we're paying the new hires to quit, why wouldn't we do this for the whole organization? Why not once a year when we're giving annual merit increases, give people the choice? Take the annual merit increase at door number 1, or behind door number 2 is, let's say, 10% of your gross earnings that you can take as a one-time hit, and you can go and fly and be free. And so again, every single year, people are being given now this opportunity of, well, do I want to be here or do I not? And if I don't want to be here, I have a safe exit. And if I do want to be here, I'm really engaged because I actually made the choice to leave the money on the table. And so even the people that turn it down, it has this huge benefit. And the people who didn't turn it down that took the money, you probably saved yourself some long-term headaches. Yeah.
So I have to ask,
Okay.
is this 10% kind of a common thing out there?
It is totally varied. 10% was one of the examples that came up a couple of times. It seems to vary on what kind of staff you have, skilled, unskilled, what your turnover rate would be anyway. I mean, there's a lot of variables. The ultimate amount to put on the table is an amount that's enough to create the engagement. So if you put the equivalent of 2 weeks on the table, someone's probably going to say, I might as well just keep working. It has to be enough to make it a choice. So that if you turn it down, you turned it down not to laugh at it because it was a joke amount of money, but you turned it down because you want to be here. Yeah. And so for some organizations, 10% is not enough. And for others, it's too much. Celebrate departures. All right, you've paid them to leave, but they might still have some great value. One of the people who might have taken the door with the quick payout might actually have been with your organization for 10 years and is this incredible resource. So the whole idea of celebrating departures is instead of saying goodbye, don't let the door hit you on the back, instead it's, see you later. Let's see how we can make it work. So both the under new management and the super bosses really talked a lot about this. The whole idea that churn is actually better than you think. So having a casual acceptance with departures allows people to chart their own course, to spread their mentees throughout, encouraging and applauding the departure that's right for them. And then I like how the role kind of changes. You become this concerned grandparent. You stay in touch. You keep checking in with them. You think back to the time that they were with you as your tour of duty. I think in Scott, right?
Scott.
In your presentation yesterday, I think somebody on your panel mentioned you're in an organization, the association world, for so long. Sometimes you need to send people out and tell them to go away for 3 years and come back, just because you need to bring that energy back with them, those new skills. So a whole new idea on retention isn't always the goal. So there's even these alumni networks now. This creates this fertile combination of letting people go, staying in touch, and helping out. So a lot of the large consulting firms, they know that they're bringing in these huge classes of raw talent with the idea that a very small percentage, somewhere like 1 to 3% of those regular annual classes are going to actually become full partners. And when you realize that you're hiring these large groups of people with the idea that the vast majority are going to leave, well, you need to make some goodwill out of that. And so several of the major consulting firms have turned it into creating really active alumni networks. And they use these alumni networks to benefit both the network at large and the organization internally. So you can find out what the competition is doing because you've got people all over the place. You have a resource to bring in new candidates and new talent because you've got people all over the place doing your recruiting for you. Some organizations even pay their alumni when they refer an individual to be hired. Whole different twist on how you get your next hire. They use these organizations to help with philanthropy and all kinds of other angles on it. So it just becomes a really great wealth of resources. And with our new social inclinations in the world, the way that LinkedIn and Facebook work, you can create these alumni networks to really support these kind of hidden groups, these former employees to be part of the organization from a different perspective. All right, next big topic. We came up with 4 topics here because we made the money a really big one.
Why would you want to use unlimited vacation?
Because people usually don't take it. Yeah, you give it out there, you let your staff think that, yeah, you have the benefit, but they know that they're not going to take a limited vacation.
Yeah, you read my slide.
That's
There's also not a financial impact on your P&L statements.
only when they leave, then you have to specify what's the payout the unused paid vacation is going to be. That may be a huge impact on your bottom line. And actually, yeah, by law.
Right, so, and I'll touch on that in a couple slides. So yes, unlimited vacation is actually really about creating a trustful environment. So this is where Netflix, that guide on freedom and responsibility totally went viral, is because they're the first ones that said, why are we structuring how much time people can take? As long as people understand fundamentally what their job is and that they need to get their job done and that they're engaged and committed to getting their work done, then they should be able to manage their time away from work the same way they're told to manage their time in work. So they flipped it on their head and they said, we're not going to do this anymore. We are not going to manage your vacation. You do it. You figure it out. So the warning signs here, though, are that you need to determine what your goal is in offering unlimited vacation. So if it's actually to save cost, then it's great. Don't put any rules on it. Just say it's unlimited vacation. There's no payout at the end. There's just it's totally unlimited. Use it when you want. Get your work done. And if people aren't getting their work done because they're using so much vacation, obviously that's a management issue. That's different. But if you actually want to use unlimited vacation because you want to improve the culture of the environment, you want to enhance performance, then you actually have to build rules in about how much time people have to take off in order for it to work. Because if the culture doesn't support taking vacation, then nobody will take vacation. So if you choose to go the route of unlimited vacation, the first thing you have to do is get all of your members of your leadership team to absolutely commit to truly taking vacation, to turning off their phones, to turning off their connectivity, and to walking away for slivers of time, whether those are long weekends or weeks or 2 weeks, whatever's appropriate for them and the organization, but that there's an actual break.
But you're gonna have to build all sorts of rules around this. Because let's admit, 20% of our staff is probably a low performing group. But if you say unlimited vacation, they're not gonna do it. So if you're willing to do this unlimited vacation, you also have to be willing to fire people.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
And there are organizations that just don't fire people. So you have to be willing to say, I'm done with you.
I agree with that. Yep.
And you have to have the performance reviews done and everything.
That I'm not so sure I agree with.
You have to have the performance documented.
Yes, you have to,
No
well,
matter what system you use, you have to have documented performance.
you have to have documented failed performance if the goal is to discipline out.
Yeah.
Yep. So the reason for offering unlimited vacation, depending on, again, what your goal is for why you're offering it, would change your approach and how you would do it. But it does become a wonderful recruiting tool for sure. It's very easy to manage, and because then you're managing the work, you're managing the performance. The book Under New Management actually had an interesting twist on this too, which is that not only is it unlimited vacation, but when you give somebody a job offer and they accept and you get their start date, so let's say someone agrees to start on August 1st, then you say, great, your first 2 weeks of work are vacation, come in on the 14th. What? I'm going to pay you starting the 1st, but I don't want you to show up till the 14th because you've invested a lot of energy in your job search and closing out all the things you were doing to get here. When you walk into work on your first day, I want you totally committed here, relaxed, and ready. How many people come into their new job so exhausted from closing out everything from their last job?
Do you have a work ahead? Do they actually have work to do at your organization?
These aren't things that we're doing at AIP.
I mean, come on.
This is the buzz. These are things that are being talked about as the newest trends that hit the various books. So.
Signing notes.
All right, so taking sabbaticals. This kind of fits with the unlimited vacation. So before I talk about sabbaticals, let's just take a minute to talk about paid leave. So paid leave is government policies on protected time off, and it is evolving very quickly at state levels. And so it's really important, first of all, to know what your state leave requirements are, and also to understand that many companies are far exceeding what state requirements are. So that's one of the other things that's happening. But on the more kind of interesting stuff that the buzz is beginning to build some momentum with is this idea of the benefits of having a sabbatical. So this is also supported with the idea of a vacation, the unlimited vacation, and really vacating from work. So with a sabbatical, the best way to stay productive is to spend a good portion of time being deliberately unproductive. So that encourages that out-of-box thinking and getting creative. So sabbatical comes from the word Sabbath, which is the ancient Hebrew word, which is the concept of allowing rest at fixed intervals. We see this a lot in academia, and a lot of us work really closely with academia, so it's not such a far reach that this might work for some of us. So studies show that you get the most from a sabbatical when you get the furthest away from what your normal is. So taking a sabbatical isn't just staying home and turning off your cell phone, but it's really trying new and different things to broaden your mind to what other possibilities there could be. The other great advantage to encouraging sabbaticals is that it debunks the misguided hero syndrome, the person who thinks that they alone can keep everything together. If they take a sabbatical and things still go forward, then you might have they get a little debunked and an organization moves on. Another wonderful element of the sabbatical on the slide is that you're fostering succession planning. So you go away, somebody has to fill in the job because what you were doing had value and importance, and so it still needs to get done. So you've trained and developed someone to help cover for you. Now you come back, what do? Well, they can continue to do what you've been doing, and now you can do more things and interesting things and continue to grow. This whole idea of getting outside of your comfort zone and continuing to expand. Or you fall right back to where you were and individuals go back to their roles, but it does allow for greater succession planning. The other benefit to offering the sabbaticals is that even if individuals don't take it, the mere thought of knowing that they had the option to take it creates some engagement and some benefit. You had a question?
And to be a sabbatical, there probably needs to be a pretty substantial minimum time frame.
It's as little as 2 weeks and as much as 6 months is kind of what the books were talking about. But it's a true break. A true break from, so a sabbatical is, again, it's not going on a vacation and, right, so it depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff, I benefited from Kevin's sabbatical. But some of the stuff really is not necessarily for not-for-profits.
Correct.
I mean, we usually have limited staff. How many times are you told to do more with the staff you have or less, right? How many positions do we not fund because we need some salary savings to cover deficits? There are things that we do. This stuff, to me, if you have this kind of flex time in your staff, I can help you save money in your organization. Because we're nonprofits. This stuff, Kevin did have a paid sabbatical. He's my executive officer's PhD. And so everybody on council's a PhD, and it was issued in his contract. But then Moak took over with a policy guy to take care of everything during that period of time. It's not like we hired additional people to help me do my job or Joel do his job. We sucked it up and did more work because it was for Kevin. I just don't see how this stuff can work in a normal nonprofit. I just don't.
So Sharia and Scott.
Okay, so I think a lot of it has to go with there has to be some work-life balance and work-life integration for folks. And as us and associations have a hard time recruiting and retaining staff and pulling people from the non-traditional, we're pulling people from for-profit worlds to come into the not-for-profit community. We have to be able to bridge a gap and find things that make us stand out. And so these are things that are just the buzz and are working in other spaces that are pulling our talent away from us. So we need to know those things and how then, as an association of the organization, we can help make our place a better place to work.
Scott.
Well, you stated it better than I would. Right, you're right. But if we not the old school nonprofit world, then not all of these are applicable, but if we're aware of them and implement some, obviously not all, we might actually bring in people from the for-profit world.
But usually you bring those people from the for-profit world because of your pension contributions are usually better than some of the for-profit companies, unless there's equity, and that those people you're not gonna pull away. They're getting an equity
Oh,
share.
but you know what, we just have hired a whole slew of people from the for-profit world, and it's because of picking and choosing some of these things, not just relying on the pension. So there's some interesting ideas, and they won't work, as you said, they won't work for everyone, but there are definitely forward-thinking ways of trying to find options.
Right.
Before you go on.
Yeah.
I can also see, having been both larger and smaller not-for-profits, I can definitely see where a lot of this could apply much more quickly and easily in a large organization. Where there's more flexibility. And being in a small organization, you can see how a lot of this would be a lot tougher to really sink in.
Right.
You have one person that does one function, you don't have 5.
Right.
You don't have
Or one
3.
person does 5 functions.
Or one person.
All right, money. So in Managing for Happiness, again, this one, the author reminds us of a need for a careful balance between paying people for work without destroying their motivation. Interesting idea. So back when I first started working, we heard a lot about golden handcuffs. And so if you pay somebody too much, they're not willing to leave, no matter how bad the job has become, no matter how their well-being is being destroyed. They're not going to move away because they're committed to that money. So it's finding that really careful balance. So with annual merits, another suggestion is to provide bonuses that inspire, that motivate, and that value the contributions rather than kind of a perfunctory straight percentage amount. So the question was asked earlier, I think by Lori, about so how do you, if you're doing away with annual performance reviews, then how do you pay people? And there are several different options when you move away from the annual merit. One is that you put people into much more broad pools, sort of the productive, the unproductive, very low to zero pool, or prorated pools, or the highly productive, and rather than really grading it out. And then you don't need the annual merit form that says whether they got a 3.2 or a 3.1. If they're performing what's expected overall, then they're in the pool. And if they did something extraordinary, they're in a bigger pool. If they're new to the position and they're too new to rate, they're either prorated or they get a 0. If they're under a performer, obviously, you're holding them accountable, you're disciplining them, and you're not providing the increases. Individual versus team awards, there's a big shift to helping support the team and providing awards within the team to help support collaboration and to get peer input in who also deserves the awards. And in several of these books, they really talk about all kinds of different ways to provide peer-to-peer financial incentives. Market value, and many of us in the past or currently are using ranges that we've built internally. A position is worth, fits into range B2, and a B2 range goes from here to here. The data is available to us now to really dig down on an individual position with specific responsibilities and skills and knowledge to a specific market range for your geography. So more and more internal ranges are going away and more market data is being used. And then salary transparency. Wow, here's an idea. Everybody gets to know what everybody makes. In one of the organizations that I read about, they actually have your nameplate. It's your name and your salary. It's on the door. Talk about crazy transparency. So clearly this is not going to work for everybody. But the idea of transparency is it's about building trust and creating a foundation for teamwork, because if you're not worrying about what you're making and how it compares to your peer, then suddenly you're able to take that away and just focus on the work. So it increases trust and that increases performance. We have an interesting twist in the nonprofits in that our most highly comped are actually having totally transparent salaries because of the 990s. So in a traditional for-profit organization, many of the organizations are unwilling to go to transparency because they're trying to protect top executive salaries. So in the 990 world, we don't have that. So you instead shift it to organizationally, are you comfortable and able to make that transparency leap? And I would say there are 2 major warning signs to keep in mind. Number one, Don't jump from what your current state is, which I'm guessing for everybody is non-transparent, to full transparency, because it actually creates total havoc. It needs to be a really kind of a slow rollout of how it becomes more transparent. And also, you want to be sure that your pay is truly fair and equitable before you go to transparency. So if this is something that you would remotely consider, do a lot of research before you go there. But the benefits of having the transparency show from the research that it really has tremendous organizational value. All right, paying people less. Now here's another one. Of all the topics that I read, this was the one that had the least consistency of thought. So if we look at the super boss, they are all about paying people absolutely as little as possible, sort of the slave labor idea for the number of hours that are worked, because the super boss's magnetism is so incredible that they should be paid, in fact, to have people work under them. So pay people as little as possible, because the only reason someone should stay and work in your environment is because of what they're gaining off of your radiant excellence. In contrast, Netflix goes the other way. In their freedom and responsibility, they say we are going to pay absolute top dollar. Whatever the market says, we're going to take it to the highest point, because we want to make sure that money is so not an obstacle for you that you are not inclined to go anywhere else, that the best talent is here and wants to be here, and that the money is off the table. So those are really opposing thoughts. You choose what works for you. This new idea in the new idea in the DDO is actually, it's not really about the income at all. You obviously need enough income to pay your bills and have the financial security to be paid equitably for what you're doing, but it's really more about these new incomes, personal satisfaction, the meaningfulness of your work, the happiness that you are deriving from work. So some countries are actually exploring a new measure. Instead of GDP, they're exploring GNH, the gross national happiness, a quota that measures the overall meaningfulness of success and of happiness. So kind of a crazy way. But I would ultimately say that your culture is going to help dictate how your pay should be, and the better your culture is, the more that culture is going to keep people, and the less you need to worry about the pay keeping the people.
I've read a lot about Netflix, and they do have a very, very broad out there policy and
Yes, they
everything, but they've got a competitive environment and their turnover rate's high.
Yeah.
So they put it, if you read a lot of the Netflix literature, they actually pit people against each other. It's a very competitive environment. So that may not work in a nonprofit organization.
Right.
So you have to be careful, I think, when you're looking at, even if you want to be new age and look at how to expand stuff, you have to be careful and be honest about what your organizational culture is and what the organizational culture is that this is winning in and that this is providing good support.
I agree.
Because our cultures are completely different.
Yep. All right. So now we're going to go to that other intriguing stuff. It didn't fall into any one particular category, but they were just too interesting to not talk about. So here's the topics we're going to talk about. So with recognition, that feels like it should have fallen under the money, but there was so much more to it that we felt like we had to kind of keep it in its own category. The open versus the closed office, the debate there. I'm sure many of you have a variety of spaces. How many here work in open office environments? Oh, just a few. Okay. So it'll be interesting for those few that are in open offices, if what the buzz is aligns with what you hear in your own work. And then outlawing email, wow, wouldn't that be like paradise? All right, so recognition. The book here, the primary source was the Oh Great one. It's also written in the same tone that Lexion does his with a short story, and through the story you get the lesson. The book ultimately offers 10 kind of guiding principles to recognition. We narrowed it down to these 5. And the Make It Personal one kind of hit home for me. I think to my brother, when my brother and I were young, we had a chores chart at home. I'm sure this isn't uncommon for a lot of people. You do the things and you look on the chore list, and when we did them right, we got, when we did them the best that we could, my mom gave us a gold star. If we did them really well, but not the best, we got a silver star. If you got it done, but not so good at all, but just got it done, you got a red star. Well, right above the red star was a green star. So you did better than just getting it done, but just better, right? So my brother always got green stars. Always. No matter what the assignment was, what the chore was, my brother got green stars. Now fast forward to my brother goes to college and he's in a psychology class and he writes a paper and he gets an A on it and he sends it home to my parents to see what their dollars are being spent on. And it's all about his favorite color is green. He had to work really hard as a kid to do his chores just well enough to get the green star. Because if he did it any better, he wouldn't get the star he wanted. So if my parents understood what motivated my brother way back when, oh, what a different life we would be possibly living now, because he still lives his life just at the green level. TMI. So it really is important to understand when you're setting up recognition programs that who you're trying to reward, it makes a difference what the program is. So some of the guiding principles that we took out, one of them was make it fun. And the reason we took that specific one out was because many of us work with some pretty introverted folks, and making it public and making it fun really might demotivate them. So if you don't understand the people and the culture that you're trying to motivate, you might actually create reward and recognition programs that create just the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. So be sensitive to your culture.
All right, so as you think about recognition programs, what do you think are some of the recommended elements of a good recognition program?
On the spot award.
You're winning too.
I'm winning fake coins.
It's-
That's okay. Don't feel so bad.
Any others?
It's a recognition that you can get at the end.
Yeah.
Taking off my jacket.
Well, and I think it's gotta be something that everyone has an opportunity to get. It shouldn't just be a small group, it should be open to many.
Okay.
And everybody should be able to recognize, right? So not just, the top executives saying, I recognize you when you did this. I mean, peers, coworkers can be involved.
Yeah, there's our smart awarding program basically is anybody, any staff, if of course the managing media supervisor recognize that the person is doing a great job, just in this instance, saying this is your smart award and this is your recognition.
We have one more.
And I think it should be sustainable. I've had a lot of I've seen a lot of recognitions that last for like a couple months, and then I'm with the company for like 4 years, and I'm like, whatever happened to that? I think it's something that you can sustain through a long period of time.
Yeah. Okay, so there are a multitude of recognition programs, and in this Managing for Happiness, we have this nice little display. This is as many books I like to read on the Kindle. This book should never be read on a Kindle. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. But in real life, in paper, it's a good one. So these were the I guess 6 ideas that he puts forward, and Sherry's going to go ahead and give us the reward behavior, not outcomes.
So it says outcomes can often be achieved through shortcuts, while behavior is about hard work and effort. When you focus on good behavior, people learn to behave. When you focus on desired outcomes, people may learn how to cheat.
Cheat.
Kathy?
Well, just about the don't promise rewards in advance. I mean, does it motivate people to think and tell them if you do an outstanding team, for example, this team does an outstanding job, there may be something for you at the end? Or
Yeah.
Is that dangerous?
It's dangerous. So my actual note here is that incentives known in advance create an over-justification effect. So it challenges the focus on the joy of doing it to instead assessing, am what I'm getting, is that the right value for what I'm doing? And so instead you really totally shift it from an intrinsic, sustainable, I want to keep doing things, to what am I going to get for it? What are you going to do for me today? What have you done for me
really
lately?
worth what you're offering, kind of.
Yeah.
Phrase.
Really a catch-22 though, because once you offer the first reward, you're kind of changing the culture.
Well, so you have to, so the books would suggest that in a way you want to keep them guessing. That reward and recognition programs and they're different for different things. So it depends. If you're doing a formal bonus program, be transparent about it, have rules, have a structure, make sure everybody understands what the rules are. When you're doing recognition for spot things, for teamwork, to support your culture, then follow these guidelines. And yeah, the whole idea that the peers should have a voice in recognizing each other is a really big one. Okay, the open versus closed office. So the healthy workplace as well as the under new management really talk about this. The open offices have generally failed. They went rampant. People went overboard in a lot of cases. They really opened up the office. But in most cases, it's considered to kind of be a failed experiment. Not in all cases by any means, but kind of as a general trend. So the concern is that the costs outweigh the benefits. So when you go to the open office, the costs become an impact to sound, privacy, productivity, attention span, satisfaction, creativity, and that general interruptions heighten stress. And the benefits of it are obviously that it increases collaboration. So the idea is instead that you want to create an environment that has a balance of open and closed, and people have that autonomy to kind of drive their own destination. So if they're working on something that requires really focused attention, they should have a place where they can go and close the door and they can work and get that attention work done. In contrast, when they have something that needs to be collaborative, that they need to have a space where they can pull all the collaborators together and do that work together. So really the ultimate office environment seems to be creating a really mixed medium environment that reflects your culture and that allows for different people with different working styles and different work at different times to find the space to be able to do it successfully. So the healthy workplace talked a lot about giving people the choice of where, when, and how they do their work so that it can impact their creativity, their engagement, their health, and ultimately that impacts your bottom line. And that physical environment has a remarkably strong influence on us. It can inspire us and engage us, or it can negatively impact our health, our motivation, and our ability to be effective. So when you're looking at your spaces, the little changes make a difference. I had a situation recently at AIP where we were moving somebody from a shared office space where the individual had a window spot, and we were moving her into a center open office space. And I knew she was extremely unhappy about this upcoming move. And so what I did with her is I asked her, right after reading these sections of the book, I brought her down and I said, let's talk about what the space is going to look like when we finish the movement of all the different people, and I want you to choose where you're going to work. I'm going to show you all the options, and you choose what you want. And so they were all the same exact cubes. Some faced north, some faced south, some had left orientation, some had right orientation, some had low walls, some had high walls. She looked at all of them, we talked about it, and then she picked her space. And I thought she was picking it because she had no choice but to pick it, and that it was just kind of, what it was. Right after she walked away, she went back to her office. Almost immediately, I got an email that was really this very thoughtful, appreciative, thank you for helping me with my move and for letting me choose where I'm going to work. Ironically, she chose the exact cube that her name was slated on all along. I could have worked with any of the spaces that we put up for her, but she made the choice, and it made a world of difference. And when then we talked about what the date would be for her to move, I thought she would pick the latest possible date to make the move, really hold out as long as she could. As soon as I sent the note saying you can move, she said, great, I'll be down in 10 minutes in my new space. I'm like, no, wait, IT has to set you up. Hold on. But she was totally engaged and willing to make the move. So again, the amount of difference it makes when you shift the choice is really pretty substantial. Okay, outlawing email. Email occupies 23% of the average person's workday, and allegedly is checked 36 times per hour. Now that's not the case for everybody, but there's no question we spend far too much time looking at email, answering email, cleaning up email, sorting email, searching for email, looking for emails, finding emails, seeing who was on an email, seeing who was left off an email, right? Asking someone to send us a new email because we can't find the old email, then we find both emails. Then we get a note from IT telling us we have to clean out our email because it's burdening the system. So there has to be a better way. And the general thought seems to be that in today's day and age, we need email, and we definitely need it for external communication. So don't hinder that at all. Keep the emails flowing with your external customers, your clients, your members, your vendors, all those folks. Keep it open. But internally, look at when you're using email, why you're using it, and can you eliminate it? So a lot of suggestions have been made that you should switch from an email way of communicating with people to actually getting up and walking down the hall to visit them, or picking up the phone and talking to them. Or using these collaborative workspaces like Boot Camp, or I don't know, there's so many, Base Camp, I'm sorry, there's so many programs out there. So if you're working on a program collectively, by using a software program that allows everybody to be involved in the conversation instead of email, then it is allowing for more collaboration and more transparency about what's happening in the group. Because a lot of what happens with an email is you send an email to a couple people, and then one person does a reply all, but somebody else does a reply, and all of a sudden you've got one email that's fractured in different directions, and different people have different parts of the message, and at the end of the day, different people are actually working on different things, not realizing that they're not anymore in collaboration with what the end goal was. So email does have its advantages for sure, but it is also riddled with problems.
I've been trying to get staff, the directors to agree to pick a day a week where if you're in the office, you don't send an email, you go see them or call. I can't get them to pick up on this, but I think it would be a really good idea, one day a week. Do you do that?
I think it's a great idea.
But you can't get people to agree to it.
Well, for some people, Kelly, it's a way of documenting that I asked you to do something.
Right, I understand that.
And I get that piece,
Yeah.
but we're so connected to our devices that we don't think that the personal touch makes a difference and how much it impacts our coaching and other people's performance. If, as my director, you come over and have a conversation with me versus getting lost in communication and email or all of the frustration. So my challenge, we've been trying to do that in our office as well, which is really difficult because we have remote people. So we encourage the use of Skype conversations, make it an instant message, pick up their video cameras everywhere, call them, video chat, whatever, make it a personal connection, because then that person feels connected not just to the assignment or the task that you're asking them to do, but to you as well. And so we just encourage it as much as possible.
How do you encourage it?
You have to emulate it. So every time you want to go and remind people, see, wasn't this cool? We got to talk face to face. Don't get to do that very often. And then it reinforces the idea and the concept to people all the time. I think we have monthly staff meetings where all of our Houston-based staff have to come into the office. And it was the hardest thing to get people to realize this is the best day for you to pick a collaboration room and do your staff meeting. All of your members are here. You can have collaboration, you can do games, you can do whatever, and it's created opportunities for people then to go pull other people into spaces. But if you don't emulate, it's not going to help just saying we should do this.
No, I get it. Well,
I believe it, I'm just saying. You just have
it's
to
just
encourage.
hard to get people to see what value is. And we do have a lot of introverts, so that doesn't help.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think back to the comment about the open office space too, it's then you're disrupting people as well. And then add to it an open office space where they're in the middle of something and you're interrupting them now face to face, and then that leads to another conversation. So I agree with the email, but I think almost in getting up and having that conversation is equally disruptive. I think that's why the base idea of putting projects and taking specific time aside to talk about a program or initiative probably works the best.
Right.
How many people have open offices?
It was very few, actually.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I've heard of offices who have put quiet times, like from 12 to 2, because there is so much water cooler conversation and interruptions throughout an
Strange
office.
time for that to be quiet time. I would think 12 to 2 would be noisy time.
Right,
But yeah. Yeah. So there are some easy things that you can do. So you can limit your own email and you can model the behavior, particularly at off hours time. Like commit to yourself that you won't send any emails to anybody prior to 9 a.m. and you won't send any emails to anybody after 6 p.m. And that you'll respect that those off hour times, unless it's an emergency, are times that emails aren't being sent. Because I know that when I get emails at 10:45 at night, I think they're important, and so I look at them, and depending on what the content is, it might rile me up more than I want to be riled up at 10:45 at night. And it makes me wonder why they're sending an email to me at 10:45 p.m. at night. What?
Because they're riled up.
Right. And the other thing to remember is that typically an email begets an email begets an email, and so stop the chain. So if an email comes to you, don't respond immediately. Let it sit. It might resolve itself without an email, or if you do respond and you get a bounce back email, then you pick up the phone or you walk down the hall. So you allow for that one interchange, but once you get more than one bounce back, then it desires a conversation. So, all right. So going back to this DDO idea, Next Jump is one of the companies that's a DDO organization, and they work with this philosophy of a better me plus a better you equals better us. As I said, it made me a little itchy, a little too group therapy-ish, but great concepts involved. So,
Our last challenge question for the day is, did you learn something new to consider trying in your workplace?
I like the employee ticket. It's a very easy, very straightforward system to do.
Right.
I just like the concept behind that. And then it's the upper management's responsibility to kind of come together, figure out the solution, and address it quickly before someone sits and stews on it for a couple months.
So warnings to that. I love that one too. So some of the warnings that were in the book is, one, you need to make sure that you've got systems in place to do something once you get it. And obviously some people are going to ask for things that you can't give them. That's a given. And so you need to have an appropriate process for letting them know that you've heard them and you understand, but here's why it can't work. And hopefully they'll take the initiative to still close it and be happy with your communication and your transparency of the reason. The other thing is that you have to have a culture that supports people saying they need something, because there are many cultures that will absolutely not happen. No matter how many times you ask for feedback and support and suggestions, that people aren't going to give it because they're going to feel like by making the suggestion they're going to be dinged. Kind of something that Bo brought up earlier is if you admit your weaknesses, then how do you go from there? So yeah, it's a nice easy thing, and just remember what you're getting into when you do it. Yeah.
It's just a question, just going back to the sabbaticals thing.
Sure.
So in your reading, are they paid sabbaticals or is it like unpaid leave?
They're both. The trend is more going towards the paid sabbatical, kind of in that PTO arena, but it was both.
I like the idea of a pay for somebody to quit,
Yeah.
but that's to me, it is a lot more trickier to implement or to even try to get your most wanted people to leave, to buy it, right? So I think another challenge is do I need to make it known to the entire department or just in private?
Right. So again, this is another one. I would say every one of these 20 ideas has as many benefits as if it's rolled out inappropriately or too fast. Explosions, bad explosions. So if you introduce the paying people to quit, and all of the people who you need and love the most quit, and all the people who you dislike the most stay, you've really created a mess for yourself.
Exactly.
So before you would do that, you would really need to go into true accountability, where people really understand what they're contributing and how it's being perceived, and what they're not contributing and what obstacles they're putting in the way. And if there's that really open and honest dialogue, truly having those full conversations, then when you get to the paying people to quit, the right people would probably quit. And it also goes into what other kind of recognition and merits and so forth you're offering. So if you're properly rewarding those awesome achievers and you're properly disciplining and documenting the underperformers, then ideally when you get to that paying people to quit, the right people will leave and the right people will stay.
Yeah, and also, I came in late, but I mean, if 20% is roughly an attrition rate across,
It totally varies by organization.
very, but if you're also not paying for people to leave, I mean, that could be, people are going to wait until that period.
I think it depends.
Like a resignation.
Right, I think it depends on the organization.
We've counseled people out of a job if they don't, if they're not performing it.
Yeah.
So you have to actively manage your people,
Right.
or none of this will work.
Right.
But you have, again, we have like probably 20% of the staff that have performance issues in any organization. And about dealing with them, but we do encourage, hey, this isn't working for you. Do you wanna go through a process where we have to do a employee improvement plan? Or do we wanna agree to a time where this isn't gonna work anymore and you're gonna leave? And we do that.
Yeah.
We close the door.
Yeah, so, and I would say that the paying people to quit, the idea there really isn't necessarily about driving people out. It's really about fostering engagement in. So again, you have, with all of these reasons, all these ideas, you also have to remember what's motivating the idea.
So how does that work with unemployment then?
It would depend on the
It
state.
seems like very tenuous, careful
Yeah,
little
it-
strategy.
It's a totally state by state thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
But if they're
opting to leave,
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
obviously resign. You have to force them out of it, or you've given them the option to choose.
It's very, it just seems like you'd have to word that very carefully.
When they file for the unemployment, if there's any kind of separation severance or any kind of separation, they have to put it in there, and the work, the unemployment compensation won't hit until
It depends on the state, actually.
Every state's a little different, yeah.
Every state's different.
over a period.
Yeah, some overlap with severance and some don't.
Naomi, just a quick question back to the making customers second.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious about your research and what you learned. But I'm a huge believer in an engaged, satisfied employee is more productive and is going to drive better customer service.
Mhm.
But here, just in the last week or so, you have Amazon and Whole Foods. And Amazon is saying we are all customer, and Whole Foods is saying we are all employee.
Right.
And John Mackey, the CEO, just said, we've been all employee to the detriment of our customers.
Hmm.
And so it'll be interesting to see this integration
Agreed.
as this progresses. But I'm curious if there, in what you were reading, there was that balance, because if we don't have customers, we're not gonna have employees.
Correct. So no, it wasn't balanced in the research. It was really all about put the people first, and the people will make the customers come first because they're going to love their job so much. And when I was reading it, I also said, okay, obviously there's got to be some balance here. But I still believe in that fundamental. You know, when I came from for-profit, there was the kind of the three-legged stool: the employee, the customer, and the revenue, and they all had to support each other. So I do think that there has to be balance, but I do think that if the balance is put more towards, if the weight is put more towards the internal, then that should help the external. And it will be interesting to see how the two gel or don't gel. Question in the back? No? Okay, so we opened this up by saying that we had a little bit of a game format here. And you might have figured out that your chips do actually win you a prize. So did anybody here get 3 chips? 3? Did anybody get 4 chips?
You got 5.
You actually
Five.
you have one. He's
Okay.
got 5.
Did anybody get more than 5 chips? Okay, you are the winner of our book.
All right.
So you're
If
you don't-
make you feel bad.
if you don't want to carry it home, I'm sure somebody else in the room will be more than happy to take the weight. But of all the books that I read, I did find that one to be the one that kind of created the nicest overlap of all the topics. So thank you so much all for coming. If you want the PowerPoint from this, which includes all the talking points, it's in the system. And if you don't want to pull it off the system and you want me to email it to you, I'm fine with that too. Just bring me your card and I'll get it to you.
And they should be posted on the website.
Yes.
They are posted on the ACCESSE website, correct? And please do fill in your evaluations. It helps us, and I appreciate all of your time coming. Thank you.